Welcome to the I Told You So podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Kohl. I started this podcast because I noticed an erosion of societal discourse and how normal conversations are often fueled by polarization. The I Told You So podcast offers an opportunity for healthy discourse and effective discussions. I select topics to discuss with listeners and guests of the I Told You So podcast. Listeners and guests predict what will happen in the future. I track those predictions and announce who predicted accurately when those predictions become true. The podcast offers topics where listeners and guests can participate in discussions with the goal of predicting the future so they can proudly say, I told you so. My guest for this episode is Asunlegan Oluyomibo. Asunlegan Oluyomibo is a second-year doctoral student in the Leadership Communication Department at Kansas State University. Her dissertation research focuses on enhancing public understanding and engagement with climate change issues, communicating health impacts and solutions related to climate change, and improving public comprehension of climate change as a critical global issue. Asunlegan's academic background includes a Master of Science degree in Agricultural Extension and Rural Development and a Bachelor of Science degree in Agricultural Economics from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. Asunlegan's master's thesis explores the effects of agroforestry practices on farmers' livelihoods in Nigeria. Her master's research is aimed to promote climate-smart agricultural practices to enhance crop yields while addressing environmental concerns related to climate change in Nigeria. Prior to pursuing her doctoral studies in the United States, Asunlegan worked over a decade as a research fellow and extension personnel at the Forestry Research Institute of Nigeria. In her role with the Forest Economics and Extension Department of the Institute, Asunlegan disseminated information to farmers about technological advances developed at the Institute. She also conducted research on best practices for climate change, adaptation, and mitigation in Nigeria, and authored academic journal articles and conference papers. Asunlegan recently received an Associate of Leadership Educators Mini Grant Award for her project, Leadership Capacity Building Workshop for Nigerian National Youth Service Corps members. This initiative demonstrates her ongoing commitment to leadership development and community engagement in her home country. On this episode, Asunlegan Oluyomibo and I discuss agroforestry as a climate-smart agricultural practice. Asunlegan, thanks so much for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. Let me start by asking you, or actually, I'd like you to describe the term agroforestry and the components of agroforestry.
Thank you. Agroforestry is an integrated land management system that intentionally combines trees or shrubs with crops, livestock, and with livestock on the same land. And in North America here, we have 6 common agroforestry practices. We have what we call silvopasture, alley cropping, windbreaks, forest farming, riparian forest buffers, and special application. I want to talk about silvopasture. If a farmer decides to combine trees and livestock production on the same field, then you're talking about silvopasture. Alley cropping is when a farmer decides to I want to plant high-value trees on a wide space rules to create alleyways for crops. When you talk about windbreak, a farmer can decide to plant trees or shrubs on a row. Like I have a row, another row, I'm planting trees to reduce wind speed when there is a wind and to reduce the wind speed. We have what we call forest farming, when a farmer decides to I want to plant high value non-timber crops to use as a forest canopy on their farm. When you talk about riparian forest buffers, a farmer can decide to plant trees or shrubs and grasses by the stream side. You have a stream, they decide to like, I need to plant trees by the stream side to reduce water pollution, bank erosion, and also to protect the aquatic environment. When you talk about special application, they're just planting that you want to use to solve a specific problems. And when you talk about the key components of agroforestry, you cannot talk about agroforestry without mentioning trees. Number one key component of agroforestry is trees. Number two is crops. Number three is livestock. Number four, you can't talk about agroforestry farmers without talking about soil. And also, what are the management practices? When you talk about trees, we are talking about planting of maybe timber trees, fruit trees, or shrubs on a farmland. When you talk about crops, you can talk about annual crops, perennial crops. Farmers can say annual crops, then you have to harvest the crops annually. Perennial crops can take up to two to 3 years before harvesting. When you talk about livestock that you want to combine on the same plot of land, you can talk about cattle, sheep, goats, or even poultry on the same plot of land. So these 5 components are very, very important when you talk about agroforestry: trees, crops, livestock, the soil, and also how do you manage that integrated practice that you're trying to do. Agroforestry is something that is intentional. As a farmer, you just have to be intentional that this plot of land, I'm not only ready to plant maybe only crops. You have to be intentional that I want to like incorporate trees. I want to make sure that I have livestock on this same plot of land. And it has so many advantages.
All right. Thank you for that description. A very, very good description of agroforestry and all the components of it. Why is agroforestry a climate smart practice? And what are the benefits of agroforestry for farmers and ranchers and the community?
Yes, I would say that agroforestry is a climate smart practice because one, it helps to increase productivity and farm income. It brings additional farm income to a farmer. For example, you have a farmer that all he or she does is, I just want to plant only crops. Now the person now decide that, oh, I want to be intentional about this. I want to make sure that I incorporate trees, maybe fruit trees. So that kind of a farmer is going to get more additional income from incorporating that, oh, I have fruit trees, maybe have mango trees on my farm. I have apple trees on my farm. I have these trees. The farmer is going to generate more income from that kind of, I have livestock that I can sell. Oh, do you have cattle? I have cattle that I can sell for you. So you have what is going to increase that farmer's productivity and farm income because of the diversified farm outputs. The output is no longer about crops again. It's about you have like 3 sources of income again. Then it helps to create more resilient farming system that can better withstand climate-related stresses. We all know that we have climate-related stresses. When you talk about drought, when you talk about wildfire, when you talk about flooding due to excessive rain. So agroforestry as a climate smart practice helps to create more resilient farming system. It reduces the stress of drought, wildfire, because, for example, if you have deep-rooted trees in your farm, it can better access nutrients on that farm and help us and gives water during drought. If your trees that you have on your farm are deep-rooted, it helps to access fruits, nutrients, and also water during drought. Also, agroforestry as a climate smart practice is contribute to climate change mitigation. Trees helps us to absorb carbon dioxide. It helps us to absorb carbons in trees and also soil. Agroforestry as a climate smart practice also helps to reduce carbon dioxide emission from farmstead structures. It helps to reduce farmstead heating and cooling. For example, if you have a tree, even your animals, your livestock can go under the tree and they'll have a shade. So it helps to reduce farmstead heating and cooling. Even as a person, if you are the owner of the farm, you're free to sit down under the tree and you just have a shade. It's agroforestry helps to improve forest soil fertility. Trees help to improve soil fertilities. It's also help to reduce nutrient runoff. Instead of maybe because it's raining and the nutrients on your farm, they're just running off. Trees can help you to reduce that nutrient runoff. It helps to reduce erosion, farm erosion. That's all your nutrients because of flooding are just going away. It helps to reduce farm emissions. So we have just the benefits of agroforestry, the advantages of agroforestry as a climate smart practice, they are just enormous.
Yeah, really, lots of benefits to the practice of agroforestry for farmers, ranchers, and the community, it sounds like. So, as we think about the future, what is your perspective on the effectiveness of agroforestry as a strategy for climate change adaptation and mitigation?
Climate change is one of the best practice. Agroforestry is one of the best practice for climate change mitigation and adaptation. When you talk about climate change mitigation, we are talking about, for example, when you plant trees, trees helps with carbon sequestration. What is the meaning of this? Trees can capture 2.5 metric tons of carbon dioxide per acre in a year, both above and below the ground. So if you are worried that we all know that carbon dioxide, trees will capture this carbon dioxide and it releases oxygen, which help us to have breathable air and help us to have quality air in our environment. Trees help us reduce fossil fuel consumption. For example, trees that are integrated into the farm, they provide shade and windbreak, which helps minimize tillage operations that requires fuel-powered machineries. For example, you are thinking that on your farm, you need to bring in some machineries to do tillage work or operations. But because you have trees there, it will integrate into this. The trees will help with the shade and windbreak, and you don't need to like, okay, I need to bring in powered machineries to be able to do the job. Trees also help to reduce nitrous oxide emissions. It helps eliminate nitrogen application on the parts occupied by trees. So we have so many benefits for climate change mitigation. And when you talk about climate change adaptation, agroforestry enhances the resilience of agricultural system to climate change impact. Number one, it helps to improve crop yield. Trees in agroforestry system, they can protect crops from extreme weather events and improve soil fertility. Another one is you have diversified income. Before you are thinking that I can only get money or my only source of income is from crops. Now you have multiple sources of income. You can get it from maybe the food trees, you can get it from selling of livestock, you can get it even from crops. And it's not compulsory that you just only have to incorporate or plant only one type of crops. You are free to like intercrop too when you talk about agroforestry practice. So it provides multiple products, multiple source of income for farmers. It reduces their vulnerabilities to like, climate related crop failures. For example, they believe that, if I only plant maize on my farm, I don't know whether the weather is going to change and I'm not going the quantity of maize that I'm going to harvest on my farm today, I don't know, or this month, or by the planting, the harvesting season, maybe you have some climate related crop failures. But because you have crops, more than one crops on your farm, you have trees, you have livestock, then you have diversified source of income and it will help you to reduce that vulnerability to climate related crop failures. Also, agroforestry helps to increase soil cover. It can improve water inflation and retention into the soil. The trees we don't really know the benefits that planting of trees has for us, for farmers and for ranchers. It helps to enhance ecosystem services. Trees, or if you have livestock on your farm, the livestock, the sheep, the goats, they can come under the tree to take shade, and to its agroforestry supports water regulation, it supports soil conservation and biodiversity. We also have some additional benefits of agroforestry. Food security. If you are thinking that, oh, you are not food secured, it contributes to food security. It creates habitat for diverse species. Trees create habitat for diverse species. It enhances our soil fertility and reduces erosion.
Yeah, lots of different ways that agroforestry is a great strategy for climate change adaptation and mitigation. So really appreciate your comments on that. So what are some programs or initiatives in the United States that have supported the implementation of agroforestry as a climate smart practice?
Yes, there are several programs and initiatives in the United States that have supported agroforestry as a climate smart practice. For example, the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA, they have launched some programs like number one, Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities, and they have a project called Expanding Agroforestry Project. And this project aims at, they will plant 12,140 hectares of new agroforestry across 30 states. They are providing like $36 million to in direct incentive payment to farmers. If farmers are incentivized, they will be ready to like, oh, this system is going to benefit us. Then if we have incentives from the government, they will be willing to do what? To take up that kind of like, yes, I will adopt agroforestry. So they provided $36 million to incentivize farmers. They offer technical assistance to farmers and funding for agroforestry project implementation. Then they have another program. The USD have another program. They call it Environmental Quality Incentive Program. What does that one do? They offer financial and technical assistance to farmers. They have another program that is called Conservation Stewardship Program. They provide support for enhancing existing conservation efforts, including this climate smart practice agroforestry. They also have conservative reserve program. They primarily focus on retiring marginal agricultural land to support agroforestry practices. They also have what we call the USA National Agroforestry Center. And what they do is to do what they conduct research. The National Agroforestry Center conducts research, they develop tools and provide education to support agroforestry adoption here in the United States. And there's what we call sustainable agricultural research and education. And this project is just fund numerous projects related to agroforestry research and outreach here in this United States. So all these programs, they demonstrate a growing recognition of agroforestry potential as a climate smart practice because they offer financial incentive, they offer technical support to farmers, they offer research opportunities to farmers to promote the adoption of what? Agroforestry.
Yeah, it's so important to have research surrounding this agroforestry and the practice of it, especially to influence the practice of the climate smart initiatives. And I think it's especially important that initiatives are tied to incentives to give farmers a reason, especially a financial reason to practice this agroforestry and have a great positive impact on the climate smart practice. So, Asunlegan, I really thank you for being a guest on the I Told You So podcast. So, if listeners want to learn more, you can simply send an email message to Asunlegan at OLUYOMIB at ksu.edu. Asunlegan's last name, almost last name, and you can send that email message to her. And because this podcast is about predicting the future, my questions to those listening are these. Do you think agroforestry is one of the promising tools for helping to build climate smart agriculture? Another question is, how do you think agroforestry could help balance agricultural productivity with environmental protection in your region? And lastly, uh, I really just want to know what you think about Asunlegan's perspective on climate smart practice and agroforestry, and what we're looking at in the future as listening to Asunlegan's assessment of agroforestry and all the components of it, and all the knowledge that she has of it. What does the future look like for agroforestry and the agricultural industry as we move forward into the future? So let me know. You can text or call me at 1-785-473-3721, or send an email message to me at ITYS@BenKohlITYS.com, or post on any of my social media channels. I do ask you to go to the I Told You So podcast website, and that's my name, BenKohlITYS.com. That's all one word, BenKohlITYS.com, to connect and get your own I Told You So items at the merchandise link. You can get shirts and hats and hoodies and coffee mugs and lots of other items. The I Told You So podcast, I hope, is a space for healthy discourse and effective discussions with the goal of predicting the future, so you can proudly say, I told you so. Also, if your business or organization is interested in advertising on the I Told You So podcast, please let me know that too. Thanks for tuning in to the I Told You So podcast, and thanks again to my guest, Asunlegan Oluyomibo. Followers of the podcast are very important, so please follow, like, subscribe, leave a comment, give a high rating, and share with your friends. I'm your host, Dr. Ben Kohl, and I hope to hear from you soon.